Daiichi Asakura affectionately strokes his cat Nike, reflecting on the bond between one boy and his pet. He looks back on his past, admitting to himself that his existence has been meaningless and incredibly boring. With a shift in attitude, Daiichi declares that everything has changed, and his future suddenly looks much brighter. He speaks of a trade skill and magic power that allows him to acquire absolutely anything he desires. In a dramatic visualization, Daiichi faces down a ferocious tiger while proclaiming his place in this world. A close-up reveals his intense determination as he screams that he will rise to the very top. Meanwhile, in a distant forest, a hooded figure riding in a carriage is startled by a sudden flash of lightning. A companion asks Ms. Karina if she is all right after she mentions feeling a strange, ominous sensation. Back in reality, Daiichi gazes sadly at a funeral portrait of the grandfather who raised him and has recently passed away. Lying on his bed in a messy room, he stares at the ceiling and realizes he is now truly all alone in the world. He checks his smartphone, shocked to find that 10 whole days have blurred by in a daze since the funeral. His despair deepens when he reads a formal rejection email from the HR department of Kawakato Corporation. Crushed by the failure, he lets his arm drop and the phone falls onto the bed beside his study materials. A memory surfaces in his mind, recalling a familiar voice calling out his name from the past. Dark manifestations of his anxiety surround him, mocking his student loans and lack of a girlfriend while telling him to settle for any job. His spiral of self-loathing is interrupted when Nike the cat climbs onto his chest and lets out a soft meow. Daiichi looks at his furry companion and finds comfort in the fact that at least Nike is still there with him. Shaking off the gloom, he sits up and decides to grab a bite to eat before returning to his job hunt. A sudden thought strikes him, prompting him to reach for a small wooden box resting on the bed covers. He opens the lid to reveal a collection of old rings nestled inside the velvet lining. Daiichi slides one of the rings onto his finger and marvels at how it fits him perfectly. The room suddenly distorts around him, and he shouts at Nike to drop something as chaos erupts. Daiichi wakes up in a daze, shielding his eyes from the bright sunlight in a wide, grassy field. Completely disoriented, he looks around the open landscape and demands to know what the hell is happening. Struggling to grasp his new reality, he pinches his cheek and wonders if he is caught in a vivid dream. The view reveals a majestic mountain range and a vast lake, confirming he is no longer in his bedroom. Panic begins to set in as he questions his location and how he was transported there. Overwhelmed by fear, he grabs Nike and hugs the cat tightly to ground himself in the situation. He tries to think back logically, recalling that he was lying on his bed just a minute ago. Assessing his physical state, he realizes he isn't hungry or tired, which suggests very little time has passed. A realization hits him like a bolt of lightning, and he suspects the ring he put on was the trigger. He frantically checks his pockets and the ground, because the ring has mysteriously vanished from his hand. Desperate to find it, he prized Nike's mouth open to check if the cat accidentally swallowed the jewelry. Daiichi scours the grass around him, wondering if he might have simply dropped it during the transition. He quickly dismisses the idea, reasoning that the ring was fitted perfectly and couldn't have just fallen off. Covering his face in distress, he wonders if the disappearance of the ring is connected to this strange phenomenon. He spots a book titled Another World, The Dummy Guide to Survival, and prays this isn't a cliché anime plot. Denial washes over him as he stands up and begs for this place not to be an actual alternate world. The sound of rustling footsteps in the grass nearby catches his attention, freezing him in place. Daiichi looks up and desperately bargains with God for a cheat ability if he really is stuck in an ice sky. Daiichi shouts a command to open his status, hoping to trigger a game-like interface. Silence reigns over the open field as nothing happens, forcing him to admit that he is completely screwed. Nike the cat climbs onto his shoulder and licks his cheek to offer some comfort in this strange situation. Daiichi sighs and remarks that at least his feline companion seems to be having fun. Suddenly, strange sound effects surround the cat as it begins to float in midair. Daiichi recoils in shock, his eyes widening as he witnesses Nike defying gravity. He stammers and asks when exactly his pet learned how to fly as Nike zooms around him. A sinking realization hits him that perhaps it was the cat who received the cheat abilities instead of him. Defeated by this thought, Daiichi collapses onto the grass and declares that there is no way for him to survive here. He tries to cling to hope by thinking that if Nike has abilities, they might survive, but then he notices a floating screen. Assuming it belongs to the cat, he leans in to inspect what he believes is Nike's status screen. A sudden realization strikes him, causing him to freeze and shout for a moment of pause. He reads the text closely and discovers that the name on the screen is actually Daichi Asakura. Overjoyed, he pumps his fist and celebrates the fact that he has been granted a cheat skill as well. He examines his unique skills, noting a standard appraisal ability and a mysterious one called Trader. Turning his attention to his pet, he decides to use his new appraisal skill on Nike. The status screen reveals that Nike is absurdly powerful, possessing spirit magic for earth, wind, fire, and water. Daichi hugs the cat, relieved that they both have powers and can survive together since he has nothing left in Japan anyway. With his resolve hardened, he decides the first step is to get to work testing his appraisal skill. He walks towards a dense grove of towering trees to find a suitable subject for his experiment. Placing his hand on a massive trunk, he activates his skill and reads the detailed data about the medicinal leaf tree. He dismisses the botanical information as pretty standard stuff and prepares to test the other skill. Daichi moves his finger to the interface and presses the button labeled Trader. His eyes go wide with shock as the interface reacts instantly to his command. He panics, wondering if this Trader ability is what caused the earlier chaos, and frantically grabs Nike. The cat reacts violently to being manhandled, hissing and unleashing a flurry of scratches on Daichi's face. Daichi backs off and apologizes profusely to the angry feline for the sudden grab. He tells Nike to just stay back and watch for a minute as he turns his attention to a large tree. Daichi activates his power on the tree, and it instantly vanishes with a sharp digital sound effect. The tree is sucked into a digital void, and an item box notification appears on his screen. He turns back to Nike with a grin, noting that the cat looks confused by the sudden disappearance. Eager to show off, Daichi points to the interface and tells Nike to watch what happens next. He taps the screen, and the massive tree instantly materializes back into reality with a loud hiss. The sudden reappearance terrifies Nike, causing Daichi to apologize again and beg the cat not to be mad. He decides to stop playing around and really put this Trader skill to the test. Daichi stores the tree in the item box again and navigates to the trade menu. He selects the option to trade the stored tree for points, noting the value on the screen. With a deep breath, he executes the trade to convert the physical object into currency. Having acquired over 30,000 points, he immediately spends them to purchase a pair of sturdy shoes from the menu. The shoes materialize in his hand with a soft glow, confirming that his ability actually worked. Daichi looks at his new skill with wide eyes, realizing that he has hit the absolute jackpot with this power. He frantically does the math in his head, calculating that if he plays his cards right, he can make an absolute fortune. He quickly puts on his newly purchased shoes and socks, declaring that he has finally found a concrete way to survive. A vision of a bright and prosperous future flashes before him, filling him with a sudden burst of motivation. Energized by his new goal, Daichi activates his skill and begins sucking up the surrounding forest into his inventory. He targets a massive rock formation and stores it instantly, marveling at the sheer scale of objects he can take. Not satisfied with just rocks, he turns his attention to another huge tree and adds it to his collection. He even buys an electric chainsaw from the menu to help process the materials he's gathering. Despite storing tons of massive objects, he checks his storage limit and realizes it isn't anywhere near full yet. His stomach grumbles loudly, interrupting his harvesting spree as he decides it's time to find something to eat. Nike suddenly freezes and stares intensely into the forest, prompting Daichi to ask what's wrong. A massive shadow bursts from the undergrowth, crashing through the trees with terrifying force. Daichi's face goes pale as he realizes the source of the noise is a monstrous predator stalking towards them. A colossal tiger with black stripes emerges, its sheer size making a brown bear look cute in comparison. Daichi falls back onto the ground in terror, completely overwhelmed by the menacing aura of the beast. Acting on instinct, he points his hand at the tiger and screams the command to store it. The skill fails completely, confirming his fear that he cannot store living creatures other than plants. Panic sets in as he desperately scrolls through his shop menu, looking for a weapon or anything to drive it away. An idea strikes him like a bolt of lightning and his eyes widen with a desperate plan. He steels himself, realizing he needs to strike first and hard before the beast has a chance to attack. Taking a deep breath to calm his shaking hands, He calculates the distance between him and the tiger. He recalls the rules of his trader skill, noting that the maximum range for storage and summoning is exactly 100 meters. Daichi reassures himself that he can do this, focusing entirely on the ground beneath the tiger's paws. He executes the first part of his plan and instantly stores the ground directly under the beast. The sudden disappearance of the earth sends the massive tiger plummeting into a deep pit. Daichi shouts, "Good!" as he confirms the trap worked, immediately moving to the next phase. He scrolls to a massive item in his inventory, selecting a heavy shipping container to drop. With a shout, he summons the container directly above the pit to seal the tiger inside. To finish the job, he summons liquid nitrogen to flood the pit and freeze the bees solid. The tiger roars in confusion and pain as the freezing gas engulfs it within the trap. A loud clang echoes through the forest as the container slams shut, sealing the beast's fate. Daichi peeks over the edge of the pit, panting heavily and asking if he actually pulled it off. He turns to Nike with a nervous grin, asking his cat how he liked the improvised plan. His celebration is cut short when the metal container begins to creak and groan under immense pressure. The steel crumples like paper as the tiger tears its way out, leaving Daichi in disbelief. He scrambles backward in terror, screaming that he needs a real weapon to fight this monster. Nike suddenly jumps in front of him, hissing defiantly at the escaping predator. The cat leaps into the air with incredible speed, intercepting the tiger mid-pounds. Daichi watches in awe as Nike fires high-pressure water bullets that pierce the tiger's tough hide. The tiger is blasted backward by the impact, and Daichi realizes with shock that his cat is a magic user. Daichi frantically searches his item box and decides to summon a wall to create a barrier. He braces himself, hoping this desperate defense will be enough to stop the threat. The massive beast crashes into the scene, sending Daichi skidding back as he clutches Nike protectively. Realizing he is cornered, Daichi accepts that he must fight now or it all ends here. As the beast lunges, Daichi perceives the movement in slow motion, his senses heightened by the danger. He wonders if the strange calmness is a side effect of his new reality or abilities. Spotting a critical opening, he screams that this is his last chance to survive. Daichi unleashes a powerful strike, clashing directly with the charging monster in a burst of impact. He staggers back, panting heavily, and asks himself if he finally managed to kill it. Caution prevails as he watches the fallen beast, needing to be absolutely sure it won't get back up. With the adrenaline fading, Daichi suddenly realizes he is starving. He decides to take a break and eat, tearing into a package of food to regain his energy. Getting back to business, he goes through a mental checklist to destroy any evidence of the battle. He accesses the trader interface to purchase more food and replenish his supplies. He also reviews his arsenal, ensuring his weapons are ready for whatever comes next. Daichi opens a folding solar-powered device to check his surveillance feed. A drone camera reveals a caravan nearby, confirming that his trader skill is overpowered for scouting. The monitor displays a small group of travelers moving on horseback through the plains. Daichi intercepts them, stepping out from the roadside to make his presence known. He waves his hand and offers a friendly greeting to the hooded figures. The travelers pause, and one of them asks if he is traveling through these parts alone. Alone. Daichi smiles and holds up Nike, clarifying that it is just him and his pet cat. He tries to make conversation by asking if cats are considered rare in this region. The traveler replies that cats are common, but she has never seen one with such long fur before. He introduces himself as Daichi Asakura and presents his feline partner, Nike. The hooded figure lowers her hood, revealing a beautiful young woman who introduces herself as Alicia Heartland. Daichi is stunned by her looks, thinking to himself that she is exactly the type he would have crushed on in high school. Alicia's eyes sparkle with excitement as she leans in and asks if she can stroke the kitty. Suddenly, a sword is drawn with a sharp metallic ring, cutting the tension. The guard scolds Alicia for her carelessness and eyes Daichi with deep suspicion. Daichi quickly raises his hands and claims his cover story, stating he is just a humble traveling merchant. He mentally reviews his fabricated persona, complete with a backpack and outdoor gear he prepared earlier. The guard challenges him, noting that he carries very little luggage for a supposed merchant. To prove his trade, Daichi pulls out a high-powered LED flashlight and shows it to them. The guard and Alicia are baffled as they cannot sense any magic coming from the light-emitting tool. Daichi realizes they think it's a magic tool and decides to let them believe it to keep things simple. He places the flashlight on the ground and invites them to inspect the item themselves. Alicia examines it with awe, whispering that it is incredible to see a tool that produces light without magic. Daichi changes the subject to diffuse the tension, asking if the two of them are traveling together. The guard sheaths her weapon and curtly replies that she is the caravan escort. Daichi nervously asks if he can accompany the pair to the next town and be introduced to the person in charge. Alicia argues that he doesn't seem like a bad person, though the guard remains deeply suspicious of his intentions. The guard sighs and tells Daichi there is no point in confiscating his weapons since they appear completely useless in his hands. She points out that his soft hands prove he has absolutely no experience handling a bow or a knife. Daichi laughs awkwardly and admits she got him, realizing his disguise as a seasoned traveler has failed. Relenting, the guard agrees to take him to see the caravan leader despite her better judgment. She introduces herself as Karina and promises to ask if he can join them, causing Alicia to gasp in delight. Daichi holds Nike close and expresses his sincere gratitude for her willingness to help them. Nike lets out a soft meow, adding his own feline thanks to the conversation. Alicia beams at the animal, completely charmed by how cute the little cat looks. Daichi gives a thumbs up to the guard, trying to establish a friendly rapport despite the rocky start. He thanks them once more, relieved that he has managed to secure a potential way forward. Karina warns that she cannot carelessly allow a magician to get close to her VIP charge. She eyes him sharply, stating she doesn't believe for a second that he travels alone without combat skills, unless he is a magician. To ensure safety, she commands Daichi to stay within exactly 1 meter of her at all times. Daichi accepts the strict condition, realizing he has no choice if he wants their protection. He notes that she has changed her tone and points out the longsword at her hip. Dropping the formal act, Daichi reverts to his normal speech patterns, since they are roughly the same age. He asks if he really looks that suspicious, and Karina bluntly confirms that he absolutely does. The mood shifts as they arrive at the main caravan, and Daichi shines his flashlight to lead the way. A man approaches them and asks if Daichi is the traveler requesting to join them on the road to Korum. The man introduces himself as Klaus Bertram, the caravan leader, and Daichi politely introduces himself in return. Klaus admits he knows this is a bold request and mentions the significant influence of his trading company. Getting straight to business, the merchant asks exactly what Daichi plans to offer in exchange for their protection. Daichi holds up a bag of goods and offers to sell his stock to the merchant at cost price. He hands over the mysterious item, allowing the experienced merchant to inspect the quality firsthand. Klaus examines the goods and asks if Daichi is being generous or simply doesn't know their true value in this country. The merchant's eyes narrow with intrigue as he realizes the potential profits sitting in his hands. Daichi explains that while the product is cultivated in his homeland, he knows it remains a valuable commodity here. He grins and notes that the value of any item ultimately depends on where and when it is sold. Daichi claims to be a humble merchant who knows that lies and manipulation only lead to ruin. Klaus looks impressed by the young man's philosophy, accepting the wisdom passed down from Daichi's grandfather. Deciding to seal the deal, Daichi leans in to share one more piece of honest information. He reveals the contents are pure pepper, causing Klaus to realize the goods are worth many times more than gold. Daichi explains that since pepper cannot be cultivated on this continent, it is a luxury only the nobility can afford. He adds the final detail that selling such a controlled substance within the city requires a special permit. Klaus shrewdly deduces that Daichi does not have a permit and is likely a foreigner from another continent. Daichi curses internally, realizing that the merchant is sharp enough to see right through his backstory. Klaus admits he never imagined he would meet someone from an entirely different continent despite the foreign close. Daichi smiles nervously and asks the merchant to please keep the truth of his origins a secret. Daichi scratches his cheek and admits that being from a different continent might cause unnecessary trouble for both of them. He smiles nervously and thanks the merchant for his consideration in handling this delicate matter. Klaus tells him to wait a moment and states that he will prepare the payment for the pepper immediately. Daichi interrupts with a raised hand and asks if the merchant would be willing to pay him in something other than money. He boldly proposes that Klaus provide him with the necessary knowledge and support to survive and thrive as a merchant in this country. Klaus bursts into laughter, remarking that Daichi is certainly quite the trusting kind to make such a request. The merchant notes that Daichi is still a little short on value to justify that level of comprehensive support. Klaus holds up 3 fingers and asks exactly how much more pepper Daichi would need to provide to seal the deal. Daichi agrees to the terms, and Klaus thinks to himself that this young man seems capable and could be a dependable ally. Daichi claims his grandfather always said to go above and beyond for important business partners, though he secretly wonders if he just read that in a book. Klaus turns to his subordinate and orders Lloyd to collect the additional pepper from their new partner. Lloyd bows respectfully and acknowledges the order as Klaus calls out for Karina to join the conversation. Klaus requests that Karina escort Mr. Asakura to the town of Camaro, in addition to her duty of guarding Alicia. Karina accepts the order and Klaus asks Alicia if she is comfortable with this new arrangement. Daichi extends his hand with a friendly smile and tells them he looks forward to traveling with both of them. Alicia takes his hand and curtsies politely, replying that it is a pleasure, and she also looks forward to the journey. Daichi notices the carriage starting to move and asks Karina where exactly they are heading. She explains that they are going to explain Daichi's situation to her superior, the captain of the guard. Daichi scratches his cheek and asks them to drop the formalities, preferring if they just treated him like a friend and called him Daichi. Alicia looks surprised by the request, realizing that dropping titles implies a level of intimacy she isn't used to. Daichi points to the creature in his shirt and introduces his partner Nike to the girls. Alicia completely ignores Daichi and focuses entirely on the cute, fluffy kitty peeking out from his clothes. She lunges forward to grab the cat, causing Daichi to panic as Nike slips from his hands in the chaos. Alicia nuzzles her face against the cat, cooing about how incredibly cute Nike is while blushing furiously. Daichi awkwardly tries to correct her, reminding her that he is Daichi and the cat she is hugging is Nike. Daichi smiles warmly at the sight, while Alicia continues to fawn over the cat with a flushed face. He suggests they head to meet the guard captain now and tells her she can carry on holding the cat. Alicia is so absorbed in cuddling Nike that she doesn't hear him, forcing Daichi to call out to her again. She snaps out of it and shyly agrees to call him Mr. Daichi, still struggling with the informal address. A close-up shows Nike looking absolutely terrified, while Alicia and Daichi share a light-hearted moment. Back in the carriage, Klaus asks Lloyd for his honest thoughts on the young man they just dealt with. Lloyd agrees that Daichi likely received a good education and was raised in a wealthy family given his well-kept hands. Klaus leans forward and asks his subordinate what he makes of the transaction itself. Lloyd speculates that Daichi is either a wealthy merchant's son or a foolish noble who doesn't understand the true value of his goods. He adds that despite this foolishness, Daichi possesses a charisma that suggests he may become someone of great importance in the future. Klaus inspects the container of pepper, noting its excellent condition and suspecting that Daichi possesses an item box skill. A diagram explains that an item box is a rare skill that creates a subspace dimension to store items outside the flow of time. The explanation continues, contrasting the fixed capacity of the item box with a magical bag which is merely an enchanted pouch. Klaus deduces that Daichi's brazen confidence comes from having an item box, even though he pretended to use a magic bag. He clenches his hand and surmises that there are probably more items of great value hidden within that subspace. Lloyd suggests informing the necessary people to treat Daichi with courtesy, emphasizing the value of his foreign knowledge. Clues agrees but decides it isn't necessary to make a scene, preferring to simply ensure he is treated with respect by the company and guards. Daichi presents a glass cup to the caravan members, watching with a smirk as they react to the item's quality. The men marvel at the high-grade transparency, while Daichi laughs off their awe by claiming he has special connections. Internally, Daichi analyzes the local technology level, realizing that glass of this quality is rare and valuable like in the Middle Ages. A young girl with a bandana suddenly runs up to the group and calls out urgently for Miss Karina. She holds a pot and asks the guard if she could possibly help her with starting a fire. Karina apologizes to the girl, explaining that she is currently occupied with showing their guest around. Daichi observes the interaction and wonders if the request implies that Karina uses magic to start fires. Sensing an opportunity to learn, Daichi interrupts and asks if he can watch the fire-starting process. Karina hesitates for a moment before agreeing, provided that Mr. Asakura is comfortable with the detour. As they arrive at the fire pit, Daichi notes that starting a fire with flint is tough work, while the girl thanks Karina. Karina pulls out a flint striker and prepares to demonstrate positioning it over the tinder. With a sharp strike, sparks fly from the metal and land on the dry kindling to ignite a flame. Daichi watches intently, realizing with some disappointment that it is just a standard physical reaction rather than magic. Karina explains she only helps when her hands are free, prompting Daichi to ask about the frequency of such requests. She clarifies that people who cannot use fire magic rely on magic items or simple tools like flint. Daichi processes this information, asking if magic items can be used by anyone regardless of their elemental affinity. Karina confirms that possessing magic power allows one to use magic items, which significantly impacts job prospects. She reveals the harsh reality that non-magic users struggle to earn a living or use modern conveniences. A dark memory surfaces for Daichi as he recalls his own rejection letters and financial struggles back in Japan. Looking at the girl, Daichi thoughtlessly mutters that life in this world essentially depends on whether you have magic or not. The girl flinches at his words, her expression darkening as the brutal truth hits home. Daichi panics when he realizes he spoke his internal monologue out loud in front of her. He quickly bows his head and apologizes to Colette for his insensitive and rude comment. Colette forces a smile and tells him not to worry, claiming she has gotten used to hearing it. She explains that despite her lack of magic, she is lucky to work for a fine company with kind people. With a bittersweet expression, she insists that she is truly blessed to have what she has. Daichi feels a wave of shame for his shallow ambition, realizing his plan to just get rich was terribly selfish. A new resolve hardens in his mind as he decides to use his abilities to disrupt the value system of this world. He envisions a future where he empowers those without magic by introducing technology from Earth. Making his decision, Daichi calls out to Miss Colette to get her attention. He reaches into his pocket and tells her he has a special tool for starting fires. With a casual flick of his wrist, he tosses a small plastic object toward the surprised girl. Colette catches it and stares in confusion at the small, unfamiliar pyromancy item in her hands. She marvels at its transparency, comparing it to a gem, and asks if it is a magic item. Daichi smiles and confirms that while it looks like a gem, it is definitely not a magic tool. He urges her to try it out, introducing the device as a lighter to the stunned audience. Colette panics at the thought of holding such a treasure and accidentally drops it in her fear. Daichi calmly picks up the lighter, reassuring her that it is durable, and he wouldn't be mad even if she broke it. He places it back in her trembling hands, insisting that she can use it without any worry. Colette presses the ignition switch, her eyes going wide as a steady flame springs to life. The campfire crackles and pops as the wood burns steadily, proving the effectiveness of the ignition tool. Colette stares at the flame in awe, blushing as she tells Daichi that his country seems like a wonderful place. Daichi explains that he is a foreign merchant who wants to spread tools that allow non-magic users to live easier lives. Colette beams with a dazzling smile and encourages him, declaring that with such great products he will definitely succeed. Moved by her words, Daichi holds out the lighter and places it into her hands. He tells her to keep it as a gift for teaching him so much, and as an apology for disturbing her work. Daichi turns to leave with a wave, but Colette panics and shouts for him to wait a minute. She chases after him, insisting that she cannot possibly accept such an incredibly valuable item for free. Their argument is interrupted when a massive shadow falls over them, causing Daichi and Karina to look up in surprise. A giant armored man towers over them, asking if Daichi is the one meant to be meeting with him. Karina introduces the giant as Captain Jeffrey of the escort party, explaining Daichi's connection to Mr. Beltram. Daichi nods and confirms that he will be accompanying the group to the next town. Jeffrey introduces himself formally as the man in charge of escorting the Beltram Trading Company. He glances aside and mentions that the company president explicitly asked him to take care of the new customer. Jeffrey looks at Karina and confirms that her duties now include escorting both Miss Alicia and this new guy. As Jeffrey leads them away, Daichi winces at the phrasing, "take care of," hoping it doesn't imply anything violent. Later that evening, a simple wooden bowl sits on the ground near the camp provisions. Daichi relaxes in his tent with Nike on his stomach, staring at the ceiling and reflecting on the day's events. He sighs, realizing that the locals were more impressed by the lighter's transparent plastic case than its actual function. A memory of Colette admiring the gem-like quality of the plastic replays in his mind, highlighting the cultural gap. His thoughts are interrupted by Karina's voice from outside, asking if Mr. Asakura is still awake. Daichi checks his digital watch, seeing it is nearly 9 p.m., as Karina informs him the president wants to speak immediately. Paranoia sets in as Daichi wonders if there is a problem with the pepper, and he quickly removes his modern watch to hide it. He exits the tent and follows Karina toward the center of the camp, where a large bonfire roars. Daichi notices Khaled sitting nervously near the fire, looking small and worried. Karina gestures toward a large, well-lit tent and guides Daichi to the entrance. Daichi announces his presence formally before stepping through the tent flaps. Inside, Klaus stands by a table and invites Daichi to take a seat opposite Colette. Daichi apologizes for the late visit, noticing the serious expression on the merchant's face. He immediately asks if there is a problem with the pepper's quality, offering to replace it if necessary. Klaus waves his hand to dismiss the concern, stating the pepper is excellent and not the reason for this meeting. The merchant places the plastic lighter on the wooden table with a heavy thud. Daichi recognizes the item instantly as the lighter he gave to Miss Colette earlier that day. Klaus clarifies that he did not confiscate the item by force, trying to ease the tension. He explains that Colette asked him how to handle the device, but he had never seen such an item before. The merchant's gaze turns sharp as he tells Daichi that he seems to have no idea of the item's true worth. Daichi freezes, realizing that his plan to sell these as cheap household conveniences might be in jeopardy. Klaus declares that he views this object as a luxury product intended exclusively for nobility and the wealthy. He holds the lighter up to the light, admiring its transparency and asserting its extraordinary value in this country. Daichi sweats nervously and asks if Klaus is referring to its value as a functional tool. Klaus explains that while the lighter is valuable as a tool for non-magic users, its true worth lies elsewhere in this specific market. He emphasizes that the transparent casing itself holds significantly more value than the function of the item. Klaus compares the plastic case to precious jewels, stating that its clarity makes it worth as much as high-grade glass. Daichi listens with a sweat drop, realizing that what he considers cheap plastic is viewed as a luxury material here. The merchant warns that if these items hit the market, people will inevitably try to resell them to the rich at exorbitant prices. Daichi covers his mouth in dismay, realizing that selling these carelessly could cause massive economic trouble. Klaus sighs deeply and admits that promising to aid Daichi's business was a careless mistake given this complication. Daichi realizes that simply pretending this never happened isn't an option if he wants to shake up the world's value system. Klaus produces another item to demonstrate his point, revealing a product intended specifically for the wealthy. He unveils a magnificent glass rose encased in a protective box, sparkling under the tent lights. Colette gasps and blushes, mesmerized by the sheer beauty of the delicate glasswork. Daichi wonders if he has messed up again as the tension in the room suddenly spikes. Klaus suddenly shouts, "Wait, not so fast!" causing Colette to scream in terror at the outburst. Daichi freezes in confusion, unsure why the merchant is screaming at him. In a blur of motion, a sword blade appears inches from Daichi's nose as Karina intercepts a perceived threat. Klaus quickly diffuses the situation, stating that there is no problem and he simply lost his composure. Karina sheathes her blade with a sharp click and apologizes for the sudden aggression. Klaus holds his forehead and apologizes to Lord Asakura for raising his voice and causing the misunderstanding. Daichi forces a smile while sweating nervously, as Karina scolds herself for letting him get more than a meter away. Colette looks at Daichi with admiration, impressed that he didn't flinch when a sword was thrust in his face. Daichi thinks to himself that he didn't flinch simply because he didn't even realize what was happening until it was over. Klaus composes himself and suggests they continue their conversation now that the excitement has passed. Daichi points to the guard and suggests letting Karina join the discussion since she is already involved. Klaus agrees to the proposal, provided Daichi is comfortable with her presence. He turns to Karina and informs her of the situation, inviting her to listen in on the business talk. Klaus gestures to the glass rose again, formally introducing it as a high-end glass sculpture. He explains that Swarovski glass is a high-value item traded at prices far exceeding inferior gemstones. Colette stares at the sculpture with sparkling eyes, admitting she never thought glass could look so magnificent. Daichi unzips his backpack and dumps a handful of disposable lighters onto the wooden table. Klaus stares intensely at the pile of plastic lighters, noting that their shine is completely different from his glass. He observes that while the material is different, people will still attempt to sell the cases for a high price. Klaus reveals his own motive, stating that he needs to acquire capital and plans to do so by selling glass products. Daichi grins confidently and proposes throwing in the lighters as a free bonus item. He outlines a strategy to offer the lighter as an everyday tool to customers who buy expensive glassware. Klaus realizes the plan involves flooding the market via the wealthy to eventually normalize the item. He admits it isn't a brilliant plan, but agrees to go with it since there are no better alternatives. Daichi extends his hand and asks if this means they are officially working together. Klaus confirms the partnership without hesitation, accepting the young merchant's proposal. He bows slightly and states that he looks forward to their business relationship. The two men shake hands firmly, sealing the deal and beginning their joint venture. Daichi shakes hands with Klaus, marking the first step of their partnership with a confident smile. Klaus apologizes to Karina for his earlier outburst, explaining that he and the president were simply too shocked by the revelation to react calmly. Daichi interrupts to take the blame himself, insisting that he was the one who startled them while Karina was merely performing her sworn duty. Despite his reassurance, Karina remains visibly dejected and hangs her head in shame, prompting Alicia to murmur a hesitant response. Alicia's mood instantly lifts as she nuzzles her face into Nike's fur, her gloom vanishing the moment she holds the adorable creature. Daichi chuckles internally at how easily manipulated she is, noting with satisfaction that the cat's strategy worked perfectly to cheer her up. He teases her gently while holding the cat, asking if she enjoys seeing Alicia's happy face as much as Nike seems to. Alicia beams with a dazzling smile, her previous depression completely forgotten as she agrees with his sentiment. Daichi gives her a thumbs up and boldly compliments her, remarking that her shy expression is just as cute as her smile. Flustered by the sudden praise, Alicia looks away and stammers that he really doesn't need to say things like that. She quickly composes herself and shoots him an annoyed glare, trying to hide her embarrassment behind a mask of indifference. Daichi glances around the camp and notices the other travelers staring at him with undisguised curiosity and suspicion. Alicia explains that whispers are spreading like wildfire about the mysterious lighter he casually gifted to Colette earlier that day. She reveals that the gossip isn't just about the item, as everyone is now wildly speculating about his true identity and origins. The rumors range from him being a wealthy foreign heir to an illegitimate royal child on the run or a nobleman chasing a lost love. Daichi sweats nervously at the absurd theories, remarking dryly that the caravan members certainly have vivid imaginations. The peaceful conversation is shattered as terrified guards burst into the camp, screaming for help against an unstoppable monster attack. A bloodied man screams in terror that a pack of king apes is descending upon them, sending panic rippling through the camp. Karina instantly snaps into combat mode, drawing her blade and commanding Daichi and Alicia to stay glued to her side. Tension hangs thick in the air as Daichi, Alicia, and Karina sense of bloodthirsty presence approaching. The captain roars a command for the troops to immediately fall into the large beast interception formation. Soldiers scramble into position with practiced speed, boots thudding rhythmically against the dirt. A solid wall of shields forms at the front as the men brace their spears for the incoming impact. Daichi watches the disciplined maneuver with sweat on his brow, realizing the severity of the threat. He recalls that king apes are intelligent pack hunters known for their terrifying speed and raw power. Karina stands firm beside her charges and declares that her only duty is to guard Daichi and Alicia. Daichi asks why she isn't joining the defensive line since her strength would be valuable there. She refuses to abandon her post, prompting Daichi to urge her to focus solely on protecting Alicia. He reminds her to rely on her physical enhancement magic and enchanted gear to ensure the girl's safety. Daichi watches the formation and uses that physical enhancement as a type of non-elemental magic. He wonders if he might be capable of such magic himself, just as the guards shout that the enemy is here. A horde of white-furred king apes bursts from the tree line, screeching with primal fury. The captain waits for the perfect moment before screaming the order to loose the arrows. A volley of arrows whistles through the air, aiming directly for the center of the charging pack. The apes leap high into the air with supernatural agility to evade the deadly projectiles. The captain smirks, convinced the beasts have made a fatal error since they cannot dodge in mid-air. Another wave of arrows flies toward the airborne targets to finish them off before they land. To everyone's horror, the lead ape catches an arrow in its teeth and mocks them with a sinister cackle. The captain overcomes his shock instantly and screams for the mages to switch to magic attacks. Blasts of fire and energy erupt from the back line, slamming into the apes and forcing them back. The front line clashes violently with the monsters, shields groaning under the heavy blows. Daichi watches the chaotic melee nervously and asks if the soldiers can truly handle this. Karina remains calm and assures him that the guards can easily hold off attacks of this level. Suddenly, a scout shouts a panic-stricken warning that a dozen more apes are approaching from the south. The captain rallies his men, roaring that they still have the advantage and must push the enemy back. Daichi observes the battle and hesitates, wondering if he should step in to help despite their confidence. He whispers to Nike to stay hidden and refrain from using magic because he doesn't want to show off. Opening his trader interface, Daichi frantically scrolls through modern weapons to find a suitable tool. He notices an anomaly on his radar and realizes that king apes shouldn't be this riled up. Daichi asks Alicia to check the southern forest, and the girls turn their gaze toward the trees. The bushes rustle ominously, but Daichi realizes the radar shows the true threat is elsewhere. He screams a desperate warning for Karina to watch her flank as the enemy attacks from the east. A hidden group of king apes bursts from the tall grass on the unprotected side, bypassing the main defense. Daichi realizes with horror that they are too close and too fast for him to purchase a weapon in time. One of the apes lunges directly at the group, its jaw escaping wide to devour them. Chaos erupts as the ambush catches them off guard, leaving the girls exposed to the lethal attack. Alicia freezes in terror as the monster descends upon her, prompting Daichi to scream her name. Moving on pure instinct, Daichi launches himself into the air to intercept the beast before it reaches her. His foot connects solidly with the ape's face in a flying kick, sending the monster crashing away. Daichi flies through the air and connects a powerful kick squarely with the king ape's jaw to knock it back. The impact shudders through his leg as he faces down the snarling beast, realizing just how massive the monster truly is. Gravity takes hold and Daichi tumbles backward, unable to maintain his balance after the mid-air collision. The girls scream in terror as Daichi falls, while the enraged ape recovers and prepares to strike again. Daichi hits the ground hard and rolls to a stop, prompting Alicia to scream his name in panic. He quickly sits up with a scratch on his nose and asks if everyone else is okay, ignoring his own rough landing. Alicia stares at him with wide, teary eyes and stammers that she is fine, clearly shaken by the close call. Karina grabs Daichi's arm and hauls him up, shouting that they need to retreat immediately before they are overwhelmed. The group scrambles backward as the pack of king apes descends upon them with terrifying speed and bloodlust. A massive ape lunges for the kill, its claws tearing through the air as Daichi realizes he needs a weapon fast. The beast swings its heavy arm down to crush them, forcing the group to scatter in a desperate bid for survival. Karina tries to shield Alicia, but the sheer size of the attacking monster leaves them dangerously exposed. Daichi dives in front of Alicia to protect her, pushing her out of the way of the beast's gnashing teeth. Alicia screams Daichi's name in horror as the king ape clamps its massive jaws down on his arm. Daichi grits his teeth and refuses to give up, swearing internally that he won't go down that easily. A split second passes and he realizes with shock that the bite doesn't hurt at all. Confusion washes over him as he stares at the beast's mouth, wondering why his arm isn't being crushed. The king ape looks equally confused, biting down harder but failing to pierce Daichi's defense. Daichi realizes that his physical enhancement magic and enchanted gear are actively protecting him from the damage. Time seems to slow down as he observes the monster's movements, noting that it looks unusually sluggish. He dodges a follow-up swipe with ease, realizing that his enhanced reflexes allow him to see the attacks coming. Confidence surging, Daichi draws his replica Bowie knife and declares that he has finally got the hang of this. He plunges the knife into the beast's neck with a wet thud, the blade sinking in effortlessly. Daichi marvels at the power of physical enhancement, realizing that his strength has been boosted to superhuman levels. He slashes through the monster's hide, noting that it feels as soft as stabbing a cake with a fork. Emboldened by his success, Daichi shouts for Karina to flank the enemy while he covers her back. Karina's eyes narrow in focus as she synchronizes her movements with Daichi's assault. Daichi finds himself grabbed by another ape and tries to stab it, but the beast roars in defiance. He realizes with panic that his knife is too short to reach the heart, cursing the limitations of a 23-centimeter blade. Daichi freezes with an awkward smile and mutters, "Oops," as the furious ape looms over him. He stares helplessly at the monster, realizing that his attack has failed to deliver a fatal blow. A sword flashes above his head as Karina steps in to save him from his mistake. With a single fluid motion, she slices through the ape's arm and sprays blood across the battlefield. Karina stands victorious over the fallen beast, wiping the blood from her cheek with a fierce expression. Daichi looks up from the ground, blushing slightly as he admires her incredible combat prowess. The girls rush over to him, shouting his name and scolding him for being so reckless. Daichi gives a thumbs up with a cheeky grin, asking if the two of them are uninjured while Nike pops out to say hello. Alicia and Karina yell back in unison, telling him to worry about himself instead of asking dumb questions. Ignoring the scolding, Daichi turns his attention to the main battlefield and asks how the defensive line is holding. Karina observes the fight and notes that the enemy numbers are thinning, meaning they can drive them out if they keep pushing. Karina stands firm with a solemn expression, declaring that her only job is to ensure the safety of Daichi and Alicia. She turns her head to hide the blood on her cheek, but Daichi keeps his eyes locked on her with a super worried and intense look. Daichi watches as she sheathes her blade with a sharp click, signaling the end of the immediate danger. He analyzes the retreating monsters, noting that their morale has broken and their plan to flank the defensive line has completely failed. The remaining king apes scramble into the forest in a panic, abandoning their attack as they flee for their lives. Karina points a gloved finger at the retreating beasts and looks back at Daichi with a smug, victorious smile. Daichi smiles back, thinking to himself that she looks much cuter without the grim bloodstain on her face. He touches his own cheek and winces, realizing that he also has a smear of blood on his skin. Alicia notices the injury immediately and reaches out, asking him to let her take a look at it. Her hands glow with a soft magical light as she gently cupped his face to heal the scratch. Daichi pulls back in embarrassment, insisting that it's just a small scratch and he can handle it himself. Alicia tears up and presses closer, begging him to at least let her do this much for him. Defeated by her tears, Daichi freezes and lets her wipe his face with a cloth while he blushes furiously. He casually remarks that he didn't know Alicia could use water spirit magic, unaware of the weight of his words. Alicia freezes mid-motion, her eyes going wide with shock as if he just revealed a dangerous secret. Karina turns sharply, her gaze piercing as she notes that Daichi seems to understand magic quite well. Alicia stammers and looks away, trying to find the words to explain her reaction to his casual observation. A diagram appears in Daichi's mind explaining that spirit magic is far more powerful and efficient than standard elemental magic. Daichi explains that while both types use the 4 fundamental elements, spirit magic is basically a superior tier. Karina narrows her eyes and asks him directly how a foreigner like him knew Alicia was using such rare magic. Daichi sweats nervously and averts his gaze, lying that he was just trying to be polite with his terminology. He rambles that in his homeland, spirit magic is ranked higher, so he uses the term as a form of respect. The two girls stare at him in silence. Their skeptical gaze is drilling holes into his flimsy excuse. Daichi looks away and whistles innocently, trying desperately to avoid eye contact and change the subject. Karina drops the hard facts, revealing that only 20 people in the entire country can use spirit magic. Daichi's jaw drops at the numbers, realizing he totally underestimated just how rare this power actually is. Alicia smiles teasingly and tells him that he really should have learned some common knowledge before becoming a merchant. Daichi admits she is right and asks if she would be willing to teach him about this world along the way. Alicia beams with joy and hugs him tightly, shouting that she would absolutely love to teach him. Daichi laughs and thanks her, while Nike gets squished between them and looks less than thrilled. He jokes that he will build a golden statue of them in his shop, prompting both girls to instantly reject the idea. A roar of victory erupts from the defensive line as the soldiers raise their weapons in celebration. Daichi looks towards the horizon and notes with relief that the battle is finally over. He suggests they go over to the main group to help tend to the wounded soldiers. Daichi glances at the captured prisoners and wonders aloud why the king apes were chasing this specific group. Internally, he stresses over the fact that spirit magic is incredibly rare and dangerous to reveal. He decides then and there that whenever Nike uses magic, he will lie and call it his own elemental magic. Daichi realizes he also needs to be extremely careful about exposing his appraisal and trade skills. He sighs deeply, accepting the harsh reality that surviving in this world with cheat skills is much harder than he thought. Daichi gives a cool thumbs up and asks Alicia if she is injured, seemingly unfazed by the recent battle. Alicia hides her face under the blankets, her eyes peeking out with a mixture of embarrassment and confusion. She blushes furiously and mutters that he is a complete weirdo for acting so casual. Recalling the battle, she remembers that he was actually smiling while facing down a monster. A flashback plays in her mind of Daichi leaping into the air to kick the massive king ape. The terrifying memory of the beast's jaws snapping shut vividly replays in her thoughts. She wonders why Daichi was standing there so confidently, instead of running away like a normal person. In her memory, Daichi grins fearlessly in the face of death, looking like he was enjoying the thrill. Alicia questions why anyone would smile in such a desperate situation, unable to comprehend his bravery. She recalls her grandmother's fairy tales about legendary heroes who possessed invincible magic equipment. A fantasy bubble forms where she imagines Daichi as a literal knight in shining armor protecting her. Alicia violently shakes her head to dispel the thought, shouting, "No!" to herself in a panic. She realizes that his attitude towards her didn't change at all, even after learning she could use spirit magic. The image of his carefree smile lingers in her mind, proving that he isn't afraid of her power. She peeks out from her hood and gazes at him, her heart fluttering with a mix of curiosity and admiration. The scene shifts to Karina screaming in disbelief when Daichi admits he has never ridden a horse before. Daichi complains about the bumpy carriage ride while the girls look completely unbothered by the motion. He looks out the window and notices the other travelers casting strange glances in his direction. Daichi realizes that everyone is staring at him and wonders what he did to attract so much attention. He arrogantly assumes they are staring because he is a guest of honor, completely missing the point. Karina douses his ego by explaining they are staring because of the rumors while she eats her hard bread. She reveals that while they were told to keep the lighter a secret, there is another reason for the stares. Daichi realizes they are talking about his modern tent, which stands out like a sore thumb in this world. Alicia adds that strange light was leaking out of his tent all night, which only fueled the gossip. Karina scolds him for his lack of discretion and demands that he consult her before showing off his goods. Daichi apologizes profusely and promises to run everything by her and the guild leader from now on. Alicia's curiosity gets the better of her, and she shyly asks to see the tool he used to make the light. Daichi points a thumb at himself and casually invites her to stop by his tent later if she wants to see it. He instantly regrets the invitation, realizing that inviting a young girl to his tent at night sounds incredibly sleazy. Daichi tries to backtrack and apologizes for speaking so rudely to a young maiden. Karina immediately scolds him, stating that calling her a young maiden is actually rude to a grown woman. She drops the bombshell that Alicia is actually 20 years old, not a child. Alicia adds that she is 19, meaning both girls are actually older than he appears to be. Daichi is shocked and reveals that he is actually 22, which makes him the oldest one there. The girls look at him with total disbelief, convinced that he is joking about his age. Daichi clutches his chest in agony, realizing that everyone in this world thinks he is just a teenager. The group awkwardly agrees to call it even since they all misunderstood each other's ages. Daichi watches as the soldiers use earth magic to bury the dead and level the ground after the battle. He comments on the prisoners, but Karina warns him not to waste his sympathy on such people. She reveals that the poachers lured the monsters by. Karina explains that king apes are mostly used by the military for labor after being tamed. She reveals the unsettling truth that the beasts are fitted with slave collars to ensure their obedience. A diagram explains the market value of the apes, noting that babies under 2 months cost 20 gold coins. Daichi asks if the poachers committed a crime, but Karina clarifies they were only liable for civil damages. She explains that since they couldn't pay the 1,000,000 yen fine, they were forced into indentured servitude. Daichi lies back in sighs, remarking that adventuring doesn't seem to pay well if one mistake ruins you. Karina takes offense to his comment and reminds him that she is an adventurer herself. She softens her tone and admits that it's actually not a bad job as long as you are careful. Daichi muses that the poachers were simply unlucky to encounter 2 packs and didn't investigate enough. He wonders why no one searched for survivors, questioning the cold reality of this world. Looking out at the rugged landscape, Daichi concludes that this is indeed a harsh and unforgiving world. He reflects on his earlier faux pas, realizing that approaching a woman with physical enhancement is considered rude. Daiichi notes that the culture and civilization of this country are fundamentally different from his own. Karina tells Alicia not to spoil him while she pats Daiichi's head like a child. Daiichi decides to change the mood and pulls a gift from his bag to share with them during the break. He reveals a selection of Japanese sandwiches, surprising the girls with a colorful and unfamiliar packaging. Daiichi encourages them to help themselves, explaining that this is food from his homeland. Karina sniffs the package suspiciously, while Alicia stares at the strange item with intense curiosity. Alicia deduces that the food is fresh because it came from his item box disguised as a magic bag. Daiichi confirms her suspicion and invites them to dig in before the food spoils. The girls watch him intently as he opens the wrapper, trying to figure out how to eat the exotic meal. Daiichi looks out the window and announces that they have arrived at Takura village. He realizes that they can't actually see the village yet despite the announcement. Daiichi notes that there won't be time for a leisurely lunch since they have arrived sooner than expected. Panic sets in as he realizes the plastic wrappers and water bottle are dangerous evidence of modern technology. He breathes a sigh of relief when the girls don't question the materials, thanking his lucky stars. Daiichi suggests that the three of them stroll around the village outskirts during their hour-long break. Alicia clasps her hands together in delight and declares that it is a splendid idea. Daiichi adds that he wants to go and scout the area alone first before they walk together. He claims he wants to observe the fauna and flora, but secretly plans to check for a clothing store. Daiichi checks his map and confirms there is a store nearby that sells shoes and clothes. He admits to himself that he stands out too much in his current outfit and needs to blend in. He asks if the plan is okay with them, and the girls agree to wait while he scouts ahead. Karina smirks and says she loves it when the people she protects are straightforward and decisive. Daiichi flinches as she leans in close, startled by her sudden intensity and approval. He stammers and asks how long he should be gone, trying to recover from the close encounter. Karina estimates that 15 to 20 minutes should be sufficient for his scouting trip. She assures him that she and Alicia will wait patiently in the coach until he returns. Daiichi hops out of the carriage to head into town, leaving his companions behind. Nike, the cat, is left on the seat and meows in confusion as Daiichi disappears. Alicia makes quick, playful hand signs to tease Nike, who watches with intense feline focus. Daiichi laughs and admits defeat, conceding that she got him in their little game. Alicia smiles sweetly and continues to wiggle her fingers, inviting the cat to try and catch them. Nike accepts the challenge and pounces forward with a burst of speed to snag her hand. A hand swipes rapidly through the air, testing the cat's reflexes in a blur of motion. Nike's eyes widen with concentration as he tracks the incredibly fast movements. Alicia declares she is going to speed it up and activates her magic to move even faster. Her hands become a blur as she engages in a high-speed sparring match with the cat. Daiichi watches in disbelief, realizing that Alicia is casually using physical enhancement magic just to play with a pet. Nike moves with supernatural agility and intercepts her hand, matching her enhanced speed perfectly. Alicia catches the cat and beams, realizing that Nike is also using physical enhancement magic. Daiichi panics and quickly asks Alicia to keep Nike's abilities a secret between the two of them. Alicia blushes deeply and repeats his words, completely misinterpreting the request as a romantic gesture. She nuzzles her face into Nike's fur and shyly agrees to do whatever Mr. Daiichi wants. A thick romantic tension fills the air as Daiichi and Alicia lock eyes in the quiet carriage. They stare at each other in silence, the moment stretching out as they get lost in the mood. The carriage door suddenly bursts open, shattering the atmosphere and making Daiichi jump in terror. Alicia welcomes Karina back as the female knight slumps forward, looking utterly exhausted. Daiichi comments that she returned pretty fast, surprised by her sudden reappearance. Karina looks up with dead, tired eyes, clearly drained by whatever business she just concluded. She announces grimly that they will be spending 2 full days in this village. Daiichi stands in the middle of a bustling village and learns that the group's journey will be delayed for 2 full days. Confused by the sudden schedule change, he turns to his companions and asks if something happened to cause the unexpected halt. The group decided to rest in the village after sustaining significant damage during a vicious encounter with King Apes the previous night. While the lodging is being secured, Karina notes they have free time and wonders if they should move the travel coaches. Seizing the opportunity to relax, Karina points toward the group and enthusiastically suggests they settle down for some lunch. Daiichi notices the girl's intense expression and asks if she was particularly craving the sandwiches he provided earlier. Karina beams with a wide smile and confirms she has been waiting to eat them since their struggle last night. Reaching into his storage, Daichi presents an array of delicacies including vegetable sandwiches, cutlet sandwiches, and bottled spring water. He demonstrates the proper technique for eating the foreign food, explaining that they should simply bite into the soft bread. Karina takes her first bite and is instantly hit with an explosion of flavor that totally blows her mind. The girls are mesmerized by the high-quality meal, finding the meat tender and the bread perfectly soft. Moved to tears by the delicious taste, Karina and Alicia marvel at the fresh vegetables packed inside the bread. Daichi smiles at their pure joy and encourages his companions to eat as much as they desire from his supply. The ladies enthusiastically accept the feast and thank him for providing such rare and wonderful food. Noticing a sweet scent, the girls examine a new item and wonder if the colorful fillings are actually pieces of fruit. Nike. The cat meows for attention, prompting Daichi to reassure his feline friend that he has brought a special meal for him too. Daichi places a bowl on the ground for Nike, noting that the cat is just as ravenous as the humans. He chuckles while watching his pet eat, calling the energetic feline quite a handful for a traveling companion. Turning his attention back to the girls, Daichi presents a fruit-filled sandwich for them to sample as dessert. Karina is visibly ecstatic as she experiences the sweet, creamy sensation of the modern treat for the very first time. Daichi asks for their opinion on the snack, which Karina describes as being incredibly sweet and wonderfully soft. He explains that the white filling is whipped cream, a popular ingredient that is beloved by girls in his homeland. Karina is completely enchanted by the flavor, stating that she fully understands why such a delicious treat is so popular. Seeing her excitement, Daichi asks if she wants more and confirms that he has plenty of sandwiches to go around. He promises to let her try other whipped cream dishes later, while noting how easy it is to win people over with food. Karina gives a bright, satisfied laugh as she continues to enjoy her meal with pure delight. Daichi feels a genuine sense of happiness watching his traveling companions thoroughly enjoy the simple lunch. Alicia suddenly grows serious and asks if these rare items are incredibly expensive, fearing the cost of his generosity. Daichi dismisses her worries with a grin, asking if he looks like a man who would ever care about the price. The girls find his casual disregard for money a bit shallow, yet they return to eating with even more gusto. Daichi finishes his own bento and decides to pull out a beautifully decorated strawberry shortcake to surprise his friends. He presents the luxurious dessert to Karina and Alicia, who look at the masterpiece with wide, hungry eyes. In a separate tent, an older official asks in shock if someone actually drop-kicked a king ape during the night. Alicia stands her ground and confirms the incredible story, insisting that what she saw was the absolute truth. The official suggests she might have been mistaken, but she insists Daichi faced off against 5 king apes alone. She firmly defends her honor, asserting that she would never let her focus wander from her client during a battle. Realizing his mistake, the official apologizes for the doubt and asks her to continue the briefing regarding Daichi. The man holds his head in stress as Alicia finishes her report regarding the traveler's performance during the night raid. She thinks Daichi was super smooth with that knife, but says he could have wiped out all 4 enemies if he just used a long sword. They conclude that Daichi possesses a level of non-elemental magic and physical enhancement that makes him unmatched on the continent. Alicia stares intently, agreeing that Daichi's origins are a complete mystery. The official questions Daichi's combat potential, noting that despite his magic, he handles weapons like a total novice. He observes that while Daichi understands commerce, his behavior is that of a complete amateur merchant. Alicia suggests the possibility that he is a high-ranking noble visiting from a distant, unknown continent. They conclude that his utter lack of caution only makes sense if he is a sheltered aristocrat. The official contemplates his next move, wondering how to best manage the unpredictable traveler. He emphasizes that Daichi must remain a high-priority asset, and that his foreign status must be kept strictly confidential. Highlighting his recent heroics, the official reminds Alicia that the boy saved her life and performed a great service for the company. Alicia receives orders to continue guarding him and provide enough local knowledge to prevent anyone from taking advantage of him. She bows her head and formally accepts the duty, noting that the situation feels like something straight out of a fairy tale. Looking away, she reflects on the sudden appearance of a hero in their world. Karina approaches the group in the village, apologizing for the delay while carrying a busy expression. They arrive at a local clothing boutique filled with simple, sturdy garments suitable for the common traveler. Daichi steps out in a basic white tunic, striking a pose and asking the girls for their honest assessment. Alicia and Karina observe him with critical eyes, eventually deciding that he finally looks like a normal traveler. Daichi looks at his reflection with a skeptical pout, admitting that this plain look really isn't his style. Alicia dismisses his vanity, explaining that their shared familiarity with his foreign clothes makes their opinions unhelpful for blending in. He wonders aloud if he could find something more discreet, yet stylish, envisioning a dashing medieval ensemble. Alicia bluntly shuts down his fashion sense, warning that any attempt at being stylish will only make him stand out. Crushed by her cold logic, Daichi laments that he misses the cheerful version of Karina from their lunch together. He shifts his focus back to the racks, eventually selecting a set of clothes that meet his approval. Approaching the counter, he addresses the shopkeeper with a charming young lady to begin his transaction. The elderly shopkeeper blushes and giggles, telling him not to flatter an old lady like herself. Daichi doubles down on the smooth talk, insisting she can't be more than a few years older than him. He winks and suggests he might mistake her for her own daughter's sister, angling for a sweetheart discount. Moving for the kill, he pulls a large item from his bag and asks if he can use it instead of coins. He reveals a massive, gleaming silver bar worth an astronomical sum, leaving everyone in the shop speechless. Alicia's eyes bulge as she screams at him to wait, realizing the chaos such a payment will cause. She frantically throws her own coins on the counter, desperate to cover the cost before the situation escalates. The shopkeeper bows them out with a nervous smile, pleading for them to come again after the bizarre display. The pair stands outside the shop in an awkward, heavy silence as the dust settles. Alicia explodes with rage, accusing him of revealing such wealth on purpose just to provoke her. Daichi shrugs with a confused expression, genuinely wondering why paying with silver was such a huge mistake. Attempting to escape her wrath, he cheerfully suggests they move on to the next shop. Alicia shoots down his plans instantly, declaring that their next destination is a stern meeting with the guild leader. She grabs him by the collar and drags him through the street, ignoring his protests as she prepares to give him a talking to. Daichi sits on the ground while Alicia scolds him near the tents, demanding to know what exactly he was trying to do. A flashback reveals Daichi holding the massive block of silver, asking the shopkeeper if he could pay with the ingot. He explains that since he comes from a different place, he hasn't actually seen the local silver coins yet. Alicia looks at him in disbelief, asking if he really hasn't seen a single coin since setting foot on this continent. Daichi shrugs and explains that he didn't need money because he simply retrieves food and water from his item box. Realization dawns on Alicia as she understands that Lord Asakura would naturally have no cash on hand. Daichi rummages through his bag and offers to sell her something so he can finally get some local currency. Meanwhile, the official holds his head in his hands, overwhelmed by the headache Daichi is causing. He resolves to indulge Daichi to maintain good relations, though the stress is clearly taking a toll on him. He laments that Daichi recklessly exposes valuable products and ignores the common sense of this country. Back at the camp, Daichi looks at Alicia with a nervous smile and asks if she is still angry with him. Alicia turns her head away with a huff, claiming that she wasn't actually angry in the first place. Daichi apologizes for not asking her first, begging her to stop being upset about the incident. Alicia glares at him, asking what kind of attitude that is for a guard, though she insists she isn't upset. Daichi admits that he messed up but tries to frame it as learning about the world firsthand. He bows his head in contrition and promises that he will be much more careful next time. Alicia snaps that he didn't ask beforehand despite his promise, but ultimately sighs and says it's fine since he didn't know. Daichi confirms he has reflected on his actions, while Nike chimes in with the support of Meow. Karina pets the cat and tells Nike not to worry because she isn't angry at him, blaming the master instead. Daichi suddenly produces a white chocolate bar, causing Alicia to recoil in surprise at the unexpected item. Karina looks curious, while Alicia demands to know if he really plans to brush off his mistake with food. Daichi explains that in his homeland, it is customary to give chocolates as an apology to a lover or close girl. Alicia retorts that if chocolate could solve everything, nobody in the world would have any problems. She stammers and blushes, suddenly focusing on the part about being a girl he is close to. Trying to maintain her composure, she accepts the gift, stating that she has no choice if it is a custom. The girls take a bite and instantly melt, their faces lighting up as they exclaim how tasty it is. Daichi hands out more chocolates to the rough hands of nearby workers, who accept the sweet treat with gratitude. Watching them completely won over by the candy, Daichi thinks to himself that they are way too easy. Alicia regains her seriousness and tells him to be more mindful, admitting she feels sorry about the situation. Daichi gives her his word that he will behave, while Nike looks up with innocent eyes. The scene shifts to the bustling village street, which is crowded with rowdy, drunk adventurers. Daichi observes the rough crowd and comments that given the size of the village, there are a lot of adventures. He lowers his voice to mention the hostile gaze as he feels, and Alicia confirms she senses them too. She explains that rumors of him being a wealthy guest of the Beltram Company have likely already spread. Alicia notes that a wealthy foreigner who looks weak and unprepared makes for a tempting target for evil actors. Daichi jokingly reminds her that he defeated King Apes, but Alicia snaps back that it isn't funny. Changing the subject, Daichi suggests they go to the weapon shop to ask about the current situation. Alicia agrees but warns him to remain cautious, as they absolutely cannot cause trouble in the village. Daichi claims he is a pacifist at heart and tells her to trust him, though Alicia warns him not to stick his neck out. Alicia sighs deeply, hoping that the battle with the King Apes hasn't given him some weird, unearned confidence. Daichi casually asks his companion whether the local adventurers or a king ape would win in a fight. Seeing her shock, he quickly clarifies that he is only asking for a point of reference to understand power levels. Alicia admits that in a strict one-on-one duel, the monstrous king ape is likely physically stronger than a human. However, she notes that adventurers have the distinct advantage of strategy, traps, and the ability to work as a team. Deciding to fix his conspicuous appearance, Alicia suggests they immediately purchase some equipment so he doesn't stand out. Daichi pumps his fists in excitement, thrilled by the prospect of finally gearing up like a real fantasy adventurer. He picks up a sword to test its balance, wondering if this specific blade will suit his needs. Weighing it in his hand, he frowns and mutters that the weapon feels a little too light for his enhanced strength. Alicia scolds him for his skewed priorities and points out a smaller piece of gear that would fit Nike perfectly. Daichi thanks her for thinking of his cat, though his expression suggests he was hoping for something cooler for himself. He waves his hands and insists he is serious, trying to convince her that he truly appreciates the gesture. Alicia approves of his chosen armor, noting that since it is enchanted gear, it meets her high standards. Daichi grabs a massive tower shield and poses, but Alicia immediately critiques that it clashes with his armor. He suggests hiding it in his item box, but she counters that flashing such strength would destroy his cover. Moving on to the offensive gear, Daichi declares that the next item on the shopping list must be a weapon. As a die-hard RPG fan, he excitedly grabs a long sword, posing dramatically as if he's the hero of a game. Alicia looks at him skeptically and bluntly asks if he actually knows how to use such a large blade. Daichi confidently claims he just needs to swing it around to look menacing, but Alicia shuts that idea down. She realizes he can only wield it due to his cheat stats, but decides to let him have his way since he can manage. Pondering the world's mechanics, Daichi asks if enchanted gear essentially trumps actual swordsmanship skill. He concludes that magic users ultimately come out on top, realizing the inherent unfairness of this fantasy society. Alicia explains that mages can till fields faster than anyone else, proving their dominance even in mundane tasks. She laments that while magic tools are advanced, technology for non-magic users has been completely neglected. Daichi realizes this technological gap creates a downward spiral that widens the class divide between mages and commoners. He internally schemes to sell high-end glassware to the nobility to build his initial capital. His ultimate goal is to use those funds to mass-produce cheap, useful products that improve the lives of normal people. The black-and-white vision of affordable tools fills his mind as he solidifies his resolve to help the common folk. Suddenly, he stops in his tracks, causing Alicia to pause and ask him what caught his attention. He stares at a bakery stall with a melancholic look, dismissing it as just a fleeting memory of his homeland. Alicia shifts the topic to the mission, piecing together the intelligence they gathered while shopping. She reports that 3 adventurer parties formally accepted the request, totaling 13 combatants dispatched to the village. However, 7 more parties showed up without a formal contract, bringing the total number of fighters to just under 40. Alicia notes with disdain that the informal adventurers are ill-mannered, though the large number might be necessary. She explains that goblins usually gather for scraps, but a growing horde suggests they are organizing. The real danger lies in the potential presence of elite units like goblin mages or heavily armored generals. Alicia warns that if those elite monsters are present, the current group of 40 adventurers will likely be slaughtered. She assesses the adventurers she saw and brutally categorizes them as rank D or E amateurs at best. She explains the guild ranking system, noting that it starts at the bottom with the apprentice level of each rank. At the very top lies S rank, a prestige title granted by the king that equates to the status of a knight. She clarifies that while combat strength matters, the ranks of S and AA are essentially reserved for political prestige. Alicia explains that adventurers ranked D and above have endured tough battles, noting that rank is primarily based on achievements. Daichi turns to Karina with curiosity and asks what her specific adventurer rank is. Karina reveals that she is C rank, which Daichi interprets as her being quite reliable. She confirms his assessment, stating that she indeed has her fair share of experience. Daichi compares her to a king ape in his imagination, concluding that she is pretty strong herself. He mutters to himself that he still hasn't used the special weapon he ordered yet. Daichi explains that the story isn't fully clear because the scale of the goblin horde remains unknown. Karina and Nike press him for details, insisting they want to know the whole story to prevent recklessness. Karina leans in uncomfortably close to his face, excitedly shouting that he is definitely hiding something. Daichi diffuses the situation by dumping Nike into Karina's arms to distract her. He looks away awkwardly and admits that the situation is a bit complicated to explain. Daichi reveals that a whole village about 4 days from here was completely wiped out by bandits 2 months ago. He explains that adventurers arrived after the destruction, but the village later requested help with goblins looting the ruins. Despite a large number of adventurers being dispatched, they all returned without wiping out the goblin threat. He details the contract rules, noting that if the village chief is missing, the lord pays only half, and the quest is a failure. Daichi adds that such a failure forces adventurers to pay a penalty and hurts their professional reputation. Karina argues that if it were her, she would simply expand her search area to take out a respectable number of goblins. Daichi proposes a darker theory, suggesting that the adventurers and bandits might be conspiring with each other. He concludes that they will likely have to deal with bandits as well, since this village is probably the next target. Changing the subject, Daichi asks Karina to follow him for a second to test something out. He explains that he wants to test a weapon from his homeland in a secluded place where no one else can see. Karina worries that leaving the group might be careless, but she considers finding a spot where no one is around. Daichi asks for a power comparison, wondering if a goblin general using physical enhancement is stronger than a king ape. Karina informs him with a serious expression that the goblin general is unfortunately the stronger of the two. She suggests the grasslands as a testing ground since the lack of obstacles allows for an easy escape if needed. Daichi is surprised to learn that Alicia can also use physical enhancement magic. Alicia grants permission for the excursion as long as they stay near the forest edge and keep the convoy in sight. Daichi is suddenly shoved by a passing adventurer who angrily yells at him to watch where he is going. He realizes that after handling king apes, he isn't scared at all by this brazen encounter. The thug spins the narrative, aggressively claiming that Daichi was the one who ran into him. A group of hostile adventurers surrounds the party, accusing Daichi of screwing around with them. Daichi stares blankly at the aggressors while the townspeople chatter nervously in the background. The thugs leer at the girls and demand that Daichi share his money and his female companions. Alicia steps forward with a cold glare, warning them that as a bodyguard she will not overlook their threats. Daichi ignores the taunts, casually wondering if these 5 men are stronger than a single king ape. The thugs laugh at his silence, mocking the boldness of his female bodyguard. One of the men suggests they take the conversation somewhere more private to teach them a lesson. Daichi observes the cliché unfolding and thinks that it looks like something straight out of a manga. Annoyed by their disrespect toward the girls, Daichi decides to use these thugs as test subjects for his new weapon. He asks his companions if there are any issues with turning the tables and messing these guys up. The thugs lose their temper at being looked down upon by a mere merchant and prepare to attack. One thug warns that killing them would result in a hefty fine payable to the lord. Daichi muses on how terrifying this world is, where murder can be brushed off with a simple payment. He decides to spare their lives but resolves to mess them up badly enough to scare off any others. Alicia draws her sword and shouts a final warning as the thugs rush in with their weapons. Daichi asks for confirmation that seriously injuring them is acceptable, and Alicia confirms there is no problem. Daichi steals his resolve, ready to show these thugs the overwhelming difference in their abilities. The thug leader sneers at Daichi, accusing him of ignoring their warnings and foolishly drawing his weapon. He cracks his knuckles and warns Daichi to prepare for a severe beating, though they promise not to kill him. The thugs close in with malicious grins, telling Daichi he picked the wrong group to mess with. Daichi steps forward confidently, ordering Alicia and Karina to stand back so he can handle the trash alone. He takes a deep breath and focuses his mind as the first thug prepares to lunge at him. Time seems to slow as Daichi mentally reviews the cheat skills he has acquired for this exact moment. He recalls his trading ability, which allows him to purchase any item he needs from the modern world. He considers his pocket dimension, which lets him freely store and retrieve inanimate objects instantly. He activates his non-elemental magic to physically enhance his body and boost his equipment's performance. By combining these three abilities, Daichi creates a strategy to unleash a devastating surprise attack. Violent impacts rock the street as Daichi unleashes his invisible weapon on the attackers. Smoke rises from Daichi's finger as he stands over a thug whose foot has been completely obliterated. The thug clutches his mangled leg and screams in agony as the reality of the gruesome injury sets in. Daichi fires another shot that sends the second thug flying backward with a pained yelp. Alicia steps in with her sword drawn, her terrifying aura freezing the remaining thugs in place. Daichi casually asks if she cut the tendons in their dominant arms to permanently disable them. Alicia glares coldly and warns the trash to never come near her clients again. The terrified thugs drop to their knees, sweating profusely and swearing on their lives to leave the party alone. Daichi orders them to spread the message to their friends before letting them scurry away. The watching crowd murmurs in disbelief, shocked that the merchant defeated the adventurers. Amidst the aftermath, Karina finally wakes up and lets out a confused meow. Daichi looks at her in disbelief, realizing she slept through the entire violent brawl. He sighs, noting that she was sleeping so peacefully that she missed the whole show. Alicia turns to the thugs and demands they apologize to the cat for the disturbance. She asks Karina if she doesn't feel bad for Nike, prompting the girl to join the scolding. Karina agrees and glares at the thugs, demanding respect for her feline companion. The battered thugs desperately bow their heads and beg the great cat for forgiveness. Nike purrs happily in Karina's arms, seemingly satisfied with the human's abject submission. Daichi watches the scene with a sweat drop, noting that the cat's charm is truly terrifying. Walking away, Alicia criticizes Daichi for going too far by blowing the man's foot off. Daichi shrugs off the complaint, pointing out that she severed their tendons as well. Alicia explains that cut tendons can be easily fixed with simple water magic. However, she notes that regrowing a lost foot requires high-level magic that costs a fortune. Daichi smiles darkly, revealing that crippling them financially was exactly his plan. He explains that instead of a direct fight, this brutal display will prevent future ambushes. Realizing their appearance is now too conspicuous for an inn, Daichi notes they will have to camp in tents. Daichi performs a traditional dajiza on the ground, apologizing to the girls for forcing them to camp. The group passes a signpost as they leave the village, heading back into the wild. Alicia brings up the fight again, asking exactly what he did to destroy the foot. She stares him down, refusing to let him play dumb about the offensive skill he used. Daichi informs his companions that the incredible power he displayed earlier is a skill exclusive to him. He confirms their suspicions by identifying the ability as a rare, unique skill. Alicia and Karina are visibly shaken as the weight of the revelation sinks in. Karina curiously asks if there are other individuals in the vicinity who possess such unique skills. Daichi clarifies that while they exist, people with these abilities are exceptionally rare. He tells them that the scarcity of such talents is the same back in his homeland. To their shock, he elaborates that only a single person on his entire continent possessed a unique skill. Alicia reacts with disbelief, realizing that only a few was a massive understatement. Daichi pauses for a moment, scratching his head as he searches for the best way to explain his past. He admits that he was eventually chased out of his own country because of the fears surrounding his skill. With a grim look, he reveals that even his own family turned on him and tried to take his life. Daichi asks if they are satisfied with that explanation, as the memories are quite painful to recount. He starts feeling a pang of guilt for the deception as he watches the girls process the heavy information. Alicia tells him not to push himself, but he offers to share what he can to satisfy their curiosity. He leans in and asks them to keep this information a secret strictly between the three of us. Daichi holds out his palm to demonstrate the visual manifestation of his unique ability. He explains that he creates clumps of lead and iron and launches them at high speeds with firepower. Alicia stares at the projectile in disbelief, wondering how such a tiny thing could take out a man's leg. Daichi describes how an explosion propels the bullet to unleash the destructive force they saw earlier. He notes that increasing the size of the bullet significantly amplifies the damage it causes. Alicia's expression turns fearful as she realizes the potential horror of a much larger bullet. Turning to his companions, Daichi asks for their professional opinion on how useful this would be in combat. Despite their hesitation, he insists on continuing the experiment to test more of his capabilities. Daichi tells everyone they're hitting up the snack shop for some sweets the moment this testing is finally over. He lists his various flavors of snacks and asks Karina which one she would prefer to eat. Blushing with excitement, Karina admits that she would definitely like to try the sweet ones. Daichi agrees and says they can discuss her thoughts on the weapon over their snack break. Observing her joyful reaction, Daichi confirms to himself that sweets are Karina's ultimate weakness. The group reaches a clearing in the forest, deciding they have traveled far enough for safety. He warns them about the monsters lurking in the deep woods and expresses a preference for an open space. Daichi hands Nike over to Alicia and asks her to look after the cat while he works. While Alicia is obsessed with cuddling him, Nike takes full advantage of the affection by relaxing in her arms. Karina notices the cat's smug behavior and tells him to stop teasing their companion. Daichi smiles at the wonderful sight of the two bonding as he prepares for the test. He transitions into his demonstration, intending to show them the weapon used on the bandits. He presents the Desert Eagle, a pistol capable of firing the most powerful bullets currently available. By opening the pocket dimension in his palm, he prepares to pull the trigger using only his mind. A massive boom echoes through the forest as the bullet shatters a thick tree trunk with ease. Alicia and Karina stand frozen in shock, having never seen such overwhelming magic before. Alicia finally recovers her voice and asks if all that destruction was really caused by a tiny clump of lead. Karina asks if he can use his offensive magic repeatedly, questioning the difficulty of such rapid fire. Daichi dismisses her concern, stating that firing continuously is not the hard part of the skill. He explains that even low-ranking mages can attack multiple targets at once without losing power. Karina admits that the bullet moves so fast she could barely follow it with her eyes. Daichi notes that while earth magic has a similar spell, it doesn't come close to his bullet speed. He asks if a low-ranking mage poses a significant threat to regular people in this world. Alicia confirms that anyone capable of offensive magic is a threat regardless of their rank. Daichi asks who would be stronger between a regular person with magic and a non-magic adventurer. He answers his own question immediately, concluding that the offensive magic user would win. Daichi realizes his terminology is off and asks if mage rankings differ from adventurer rankings. He suggests discussing the ranking system over snacks since the experiments are finished. Daichi announces the main course and tells the girls to watch closely. A deafening roar tears through the forest as Daichi fires a heavy sniper rifle at a tree. Daichi winces at his poor aim, noting that Nike's water bullets are currently more accurate. He acknowledges that there are high-ranking mages capable of using such powerful, focused magic. He asks if Nike's water magic is stronger than that of a skilled, high-ranking offensive mage. Daichi points to the damaged tree and asks if only a high-ranking mage could shoot through it. Alicia states that piercing it is difficult, but destroying it with explosive magic is possible. She compares Nike's power to 3 specific spirit earth magic users she knows. She adds that there might be a 4th one if they ignore accuracy. Daichi muses that while Nike's magic is high-rank level here, it wouldn't be impressive in an iSky manga. He expresses relief at this assessment, glad that his pet isn't game-breakingly overpowered. Alicia admits she thought he was going to shoot through the tree with his next attack. Daichi laughs off the idea, declaring that Nike's spirit magic will remain his trump card. He wraps up the training session and suggests they finally take their break. The group relaxes in the forest, enjoying the cake while Daichi brings up the rankings again. Daichi pauses while holding his coffee and says there is something he wants to ask them. The girls look at him curiously and ask what is on his mind. He hesitates for a moment before revealing that he is thinking of trying something new. Daichi declares his intention to set up a shop in the village they are staying in. Daichi catches his companions off guard by announcing his sudden plan to establish a retail shop right in the heart of the village. The girls exchange stunned glances, struggling to process the implications of a high-level traveler turning into a common merchant. Karina finds the idea fascinating while Alicia shudders, dreading whatever reality-bending items he plans to unleash on the unsuspecting public. Before consulting with guild leader Klaus, Daichi offers to give his team an exclusive first look at his intended inventory. He specifically seeks Alicia's expert opinion, knowing her deep familiarity with magic tools makes her the perfect judge of value. Reaching into his dimension, he produces a simple box of matches and asks if such a tool exists in their world. Alicia and Karina examine the small wooden sticks with total confusion, unable to even guess their intended purpose. Daichi strikes a match to create an instant flame, explaining that these fire starters are completely devoid of any magical properties. He clarifies that even those born without a single drop of mana can operate these tools with ease. Explaining the mechanics of friction and combustion, he demonstrates how the device makes survival much more convenient for ordinary people. To prove their reliability, he shows off waterproof versions that can ignite even after being submerged in water. Alicia realizes the market for fire-starting magic tools would be completely upended if these cheap alternatives were introduced. Daichi confirms her suspicions, acknowledging that his products could easily replace expensive enchanted gear for the common folk. His core mission is to market these revolutionary tools specifically to the neglected population of non-magic users. Alicia warns him that historical attempts to sell to the magicless masses have almost always ended in commercial failure. Ignoring the risks, Daichi remains firm in his desire to leverage his gifts to make life easier for the less fortunate. He vows to offer his goods at a price point so low that even the most impoverished villagers can afford them. Noticing their skeptical silence, he asks if they are genuinely surprised by his sudden streak of altruism. Alicia looks at him with a critical gaze, find the image of a wealthy man playing savior to be slightly hypocritical. Daichi counters by explaining he will maintain a strict separation between his luxury trades with the elite and his charity for the poor. Alicia pivots to the logistics, questioning if he can actually produce enough supply to meet the inevitable tidal wave of demand. She suddenly realizes the true scale of his power, deducing that his item box must be large enough to house an entire warehouse. Curious about his production methods, she asks if manufacturing such precise tools is truly as simple as he makes it sound. Daichi gives a confident smirk, assuring her that mass-producing these modern wonders is barely a challenge for his unique skills. He concludes the business talk by stating that the official launch depends entirely on his upcoming negotiation with guild leader Klaus. Stealing his resolve, he declares his willingness to do whatever it takes to convince the village authorities to back his venture. Alicia decides she has heard enough and returns to her second cheesecake of the day, signaling the end of the discussion. Changing the subject to combat, Daichi asks Karina to confirm which 3 elemental magics she is capable of wielding. Karina lists water, fire, and wind as her primary attributes, holding her fork as she explains her magical heritage. Daichi turns his attention to the quiet Alicia, wondering if her repertoire is as limited as her companions. Alicia shatters his expectations by casually revealing that she has mastered every single elemental attribute in existence. Stunned by the revelation, Daichi compares her terrifying versatility to a literal cheat skill that defies the laws of their world. Alicia's expression turns serious as she requests that he keep her status as an all-elemental mage a strict secret. Understanding the danger of such information leaking, Daichi agrees to drop the subject and respect her privacy. Alicia offers a small smile, praising him for being perceptive enough to realize when a topic is too sensitive to push. Daichi shifts back to basics, asking if it would be inappropriate to inquire about their official standings within the Mages Guild. Karina reveals that both she and Alicia have earned the prestigious title of B-rank mages through their past exploits. Recalling the guild hierarchy, Daichi notes that AB rank designation marks them as elite practitioners, far above the average adventurer. He points out that they didn't exactly fight like traditional mages when they were busy slaughtering king apes with swords. Alicia explains that her high rank is primarily derived from her mastery of non-elemental enhancement and wind-based sensory magic. Daichi asks Alicia if the reason she couldn't use stronger gear against the king apes was due to the lack of preparation time. Alicia confirms that she performed to the absolute limit of her abilities given the sudden nature of the situation. She explains that enchanting gear and applying physical enhancements requires time to strengthen, a luxury she didn't have during the ambush. Alicia adds that using her wind magic for scouting enemies during the fight would have been a tactical waste of resources. She concludes that dividing her focus would have been inefficient, implying she made the correct choice to focus on combat. Daichi changes the subject and offers her a cup of the soft serve, noting that it looks like whipped cream, but tastes different. Alicia smiles as she accepts the dessert, asking him why he felt the need to apologize to her earlier. Daichi asks if she was given her high rank specifically because she possesses the rare ability to use all elemental magics. Alicia confirms that possessing the aptitude for all elements is indeed a very rare trait among mages. Daichi admits that he blanked out during the King Ape fight because he has absolutely no real combat experience. He mentions his aptitude for enchantment magic, prompting Alicia to ask if he aims to be a magic toolsmith. Daichi looks confused by the terminology and asks for a clarification on what exactly enchantment magic entails. Alicia explains that it is a type of magic used to imbue elemental affinities into materials that have high compatibility. She uses a fire-starting tool as an example, describing how one would enchant materials with high fire affinity to create it. Karina adds that these tools allow people without fire magic to use the element, provided they have some magical ability. Daichi asks if he could create a tool with all 4 elements since Alicia can use all of them. Alicia denies the possibility, stating that there are strict limits to what enchantment can achieve. She notes that skilled smiths can create adjustable tools, but those advanced features make them very expensive. Karina explains that safety features to prevent accidental fireballs also add significantly to the final price. Daichi watches Karina's ice cream melt and asks if magical aptitude is strictly something people are born with. Realizing the complexity and limitations, Daichi decides to give up on his brief dream of crafting magic tools. However, he remains interested in wind magic scouting, noting that it surpasses modern technology in some ways. He reflects on Nike's growing utility, realizing his pet can play a crucial scouting role with water magic as a trump card. Turning to Karina, he asks if she could demonstrate her wind magic scouting to help teach Nike. Karina looks puzzled, pointing out that wind magic is invisible and can't really be seen by the naked eye. Daichi insists he doesn't mind the invisibility and asks her to proceed with the demonstration anyway. Karina activates her magic, expanding a radar-like field around them that Daichi can vaguely sense. Nike reacts instantly to the magic, his ears twitching as he detects the shift in the atmosphere. Karina suddenly tenses up, interrupting the lesson to warn the group that something has entered her detection range. She analyzes the signal, trying to determine if the approaching entities are humans or monsters based on their movement. Daichi looks concerned, asking if there are really humans lurking this deep in the forest. The thought crosses his mind that it could be the bandits they discussed earlier coming to ambush them. Alicia asks for numbers, but Karina struggles to get a clear count through the interference. Karina finally focuses her sense and confirms that there are exactly 8 people approaching them. She apologizes for the sudden interruption, but Daichi thanks her for the timely warning. Daichi inwardly compares the magic, thinking that her wind scouting seems even better than he expected. He realizes Karina is hiding her true strength and is far more than the delicate young lady she pretends to be. Connecting the dots, he suspects Klaus and Jeffrey are also hiding information about Alicia's true nature. Dismissing the thoughts for now, Daichi draws his shotgun, deciding that now is not the time for deduction. He notes that 8 people is too small a group for a bandit raid, and wonders if it is an adventure party. Karina prepares to monitor the intruders from a distance, deciding to keep them just inside her scouting range to observe their behavior. Daichi assesses his own combat stance, realizing that his abilities are remarkably high compared to the inhabitants of this world. He acknowledges the need to build up his courage, noting that it is only natural to put his powers into practice despite the danger. Looking at the numbers, Daichi concludes that he and Karina can easily handle 8 bandits while keeping Alicia safe. He advises against moving closer without a plan, stating it would be dangerous to engage before knowing the enemy's magic. Nike's fur bristles with a strong reaction, leading Daichi to suspect that the group approaching them are indeed hostile bandits. Daichi steels his resolve for a fight, swearing he will show no mercy if these men plan to attack the village. He senses a shift in the atmosphere and asks Karina if something has happened to change the situation. Karina's expression turns grave as she reports that the number of signals in the forest has suddenly increased. Daichi asks for a precise count, his mind racing to adjust his strategy for a larger force. Alicia watches the scouting magic as Karina confirms the enemy count has jumped to 20 individuals. Daichi notes that 20 enemies is a significant threat, deducing that their hideout must be somewhere nearby. He prepares to speak to Karina, intending to coordinate their next move against the growing threat. He suggests they return to the village immediately to report the findings to the guild leader and Captain Jeffrey. Inside the command tent, guild leader Klaus thanks the group for providing the critical intelligence about the forest activity. Klaus instructs his staff to relay the information to Jeffrey immediately while maintaining a calm exterior. He offers to pour some tea for his guests, though his movement is interrupted by the weight of the news. Daichi seizes the moment to ask if they can discuss a different business matter while waiting for the captain to arrive. Klaus agrees to listen, curious about what the traveler could possibly want to talk about in the middle of a crisis. The guild leader nearly chokes on his drink, shouting in disbelief at Daichi's plan to open a shop in the village. Klaus quickly apologizes for his loud outburst, embarrassed by his sudden loss of professional composure. Daichi produces 2 modern items and announces that these are the revolutionary products he plans to sell. He demonstrates a match, leaving Klaus stunned by the fact that fire can be created without any magic at all. Klaus observes that the matches are disposable and short-lived, realizing they are perfect for quick fire starting. Daichi reveals his core strategy is to provide these affordable tools specifically for the benefit of non-magic users. Klaus asks for the exact price, dreading the answer as he considers the impact on the local economy. Daichi states the price will be 2 silver coins, a figure that seems incredibly low for such a convenient tool. He reminds himself that this is a business move rather than charity, calculating the profit margins from his world's prices. Klaus sits back in contemplation, realizing the immense market potential of the simple wooden sticks. Daichi adds that he will sell a box of 60 fire starters for just 1 silver coin. Klaus stands up in a panic, shouting that selling the fire starters cheaper than the matches is unheard of. Daichi explains that since the lighters are made of easily sourced flammable material, they are essentially freebies for customers. Klaus lets out a deep sigh and calls over Karina, seeking a second opinion on the matter. He hands Karina a flint and steel, asking her to ignite the modern fire starter using traditional methods to test its utility. Daichi notes how effectively the material burns without matches, deciding he should focus his sales on the fire starters. Klaus urges him to raise the price, warning that selling such high-value items so cheaply will cause trouble. Daichi looks the leader in the eye and gives a flat, uncompromising refusal to the suggestion. He insists on the 1 silver coin price point, determined to make the technology accessible to every villager. The air in the tent grows heavy as the 2 men engage in a silent battle of wills over the pricing. Daichi remains calm, knowing that Klaus values him far too much as a supplier to risk a serious confrontation. He acknowledges that he is taking advantage of the situation, but he refuses to budge on his vision for the shop. Klaus finally strokes his mustache and yields, agreeing to question the price no further if Daichi is so determined. Daichi reveals high-end goods like pepper and crystal, proposing to sell these luxury items exclusively to the nobility. Klaus's eyes light up with greed as he gladly accepts the deal to distribute the premium products to the elite. A voice from outside the tent announces that Captain Jeffrey has arrived and is ready to join the meeting. The group agrees to table the business talk for another time once the security of the village has been handled. Captain Jeffrey pulls back the tent flap and enters with a grim, battle-ready expression. Klaus welcomes him and asks the captain to start from the beginning regarding the situation in the forest and village.